I thought I will take you guys a little bit through the journey of how I started to what I see the bigger picture on mobility and how the future of this mobility would be. And with what we're doing today and a connect to AI in the whole space of this area. So I was fortunate to get into electrics, actually racing solar cars in 1990, and had a chance to race across the U.S. And our team stood first while I was at university, and then we got sent to Australia where we raced in the World Solar Challenge and came third in the world. And I think the fact that you could cross a continent on pure solar energy really opened my mind to where the future would be. This was 20 years ago when oil was less than $20 a barrel and nobody cared about climate change. But I think the world is very different and all these dots seem to be connecting. Went on to start Reva in the late 90s. In 2001, we launched it. It's challenging times in then because there was neither government support or there was very limited capital or non-existent ecosystem, which is very different from today. I mean, the last 20 years, everything here, you have a lot of great government support. All of these things have now become a reality to create an ecosystem that just didn't exist in 20 years. But it was important to start to think about the challenges and how we could change the opportunities. A month before we launched our car in India, the government removed the taxes for regular vehicles and increased taxes reduced taxes for gasoline vehicles, removed and increased taxes for electrics, and also reduced subsidies, so in fact eliminated them. So it was time to turn around and think about a global perspective. And I got together with three people and we launched it in Europe, in London. And that was the first day on the picture on the right, which just shows you the day of the congestion charge where you would charge £5 a day unless you drove electric. But, at that point, nobody from India was selling cars. We were selling more cars in Europe than we were selling in India and this is in 2003, 2004. And I think the point of view is that as these new technologies come in, they are more widely accepted from India, irrespective of where we come. And that's an important perspective as we think of newer areas of AI and what that could happen as we take this forward. Thinking globally right from beginning was very important. In 2009, we took part in the Frankfurt Motor Show. We're the only Indian car company which showcased the next generation technologies and really try to see what would it take to be global. And I think it's important from day one, how do companies think of being global? It's such a flat space today, especially more and more in the software world. But even the hardware world today is becoming a very flat space on this front here, right? At the same time, it's very critical to act locally. When we were in UK, we were a UK company in that area and front end, and really looked at what the customer's experience was and working through this. And I think these experiences really looked at technology and parts that were very different then and how we would implement them as we took this forward. It was also very important learning for us around innovation and collaboration. I think this is even more critical in today's world. In 2006, we put together a car in a matter of 3 months with two other companies in India. One that had developed the Simputer, another very innovative company, and DC. And this in those days had Linux, touchscreen, GPS, GSM, telematics, a precursor to today's smartphones and things that you look at. But this is close to 15 years ago, and all developed in India, and a lot of the tech out of Bangalore. So I think the capability of what we have is fabulous, especially when we look at what we can do at a collaborative level. So taking a step now to see the bigger picture and looking at it, I think the future of sustainable mobility is going to be driven by 5 key areas: electric, shared, autonomous, connected, and powered by renewable energy. We heard a little bit about the autonomous side, but I think what's very interesting is going to be the new businesses that are at the intersection of these areas. How, when connected and renewable energy and electric come together, what does that mean of the new businesses that we create? And these are powered by AI and a huge force multiplier as we look at it. So how does all of this fall when we think of mobility as a solution and what the impact could be on technology and business model? Well, vehicles are getting more efficient, so they're getting 10% less energy utilization on this area. They're also, as a result of being electric, getting cheaper. So you get another 20% lower cost structures. If you use renewable energy today, it's cheaper than regular energy. So you get another 10% lower cost of energy on this area. If you then think of shared mobility, which we already are seeing many signs today, you look at a 20% lower cost because of the area of optimization. If you then remove the driver from the picture, you probably get 30% lower cost structures. And then if you truly a connected world where you know you're going from point A to point B and you can optimize the system, you probably can get another 10% lower cost. What does this mean? In the future, we're going to have transportation that's 70% cheaper, 70% less energy consumption and pollution. And of course, clean will be the new hygiene on this area. So transformation is going to be around both the technology and the business model as we look at this front here. Now, the EV ecosystem is changing very rapidly. We're all aware of it. Sales have been 40 to 50% year on year increasing on this area, driven by technology enhancements, battery prices dropping down year on year by 8%, strong government push on this area, and also consumers really adopting for cool, connected, and autonomous transportation. So electrics are here to stay, and the role it's going to play is a very important part in people's lives on this front. But the important thing is, how do you connect these dots of energy and mobility? So let me give a perspective. India today sells around 25 million vehicles, 20 million vehicles, COVID level, maybe a little less. But by probably 2022, it would get to around 25 million vehicles, and we're planning 100 gigawatts of solar by 2022. If every vehicle in 2022 was electric, unlikely, we need only 30% of this energy to power all transportation on that area. Fast forward to 2030 on this area, and you're going to see that out of the 400 million vehicles that we're looking at, India is targeting over 575 gigawatts of renewables energy by that time on this front. And to put this in perspective, if some of these vehicles were connected and shared, you would probably need around 260 gigawatts of energy. So what this would really mean, that from a perspective that if you think of a city, if you take a look at a state like Rajasthan, you take 0.5% of that state, cover that with solar panels, you can power every vehicle in the country in 2030 if it was electric by renewable energy. So the impact of getting energy and mobility is going to be huge on this front as we look at it, right? And this is very important when you think of India, because we import 80% of our oil, and by 2030 this would be $160 billion oil bill on this front, right? So energy security is very critical. Pollution, well, something that we're proud of, that 14 of our most polluted cities are in India, or the 20. I think this COVID really showed us what could be how the world could be with lesser congestion and pollution on this area. The auto industry is 45% of our manufacturing GDP. It is very large, right? India is great for EVs, smaller form factors, stop and go driving, regenerative braking that puts in energy on this area. And I just spoke about renewable energy that's actually cheaper than gasoline equivalent, which means that people can put renewable energy out for electric mobility, make money out of it. It's not about being green, it's about making business sense out of it. And the government has chalked out over $1.5 billion program to enable and accelerate EV adoption on this area. So what are such emerging opportunities? Well, India, like I said, sells around 22 to 25 million vehicles a year. Cars constitute on 3 million. And the reason I'm putting that in perspective is that, most of the world talks about cars. And I think from an India context, right, we got to be thinking a little bit different on this area, right? Because 85% of people in India use two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and buses to commute. And therefore, the focus has to be on fleet, shared, and delivery, and micromobility. And from an energy point of view, this alone is a $200 billion business in the country on this area. So a very large opportunity of transforming an area which the rest of the world is not as focused in as we should be doing this. And India makes a lot of sense to look at this area here, right? So it's with this context, as Lakshmi said, I started our new entity around 3.5 years ago. So it's a venture between the Sun Group and the Maini Group. And our idea was to try to combine energy and mobility together. Now, our vision really was to see that how do we create an open architecture infrastructure that in the next 5 years, we can get 1 million electric vehicles on the platform around shared mobility applications, especially last mile connectivity, and really lower the value proposition to customers on this area, give them a lower operating cost and faster refueling than IC engine equivalent on this front. So electrics face 4 challenges. They're very high cost because of the cost of battery, range anxiety, they get concerned, long refueling time, and there's no infrastructure. And these are the reasons electrics really haven't been working. But if you remove the battery and battery management system and all the cooling system that goes with it, and the electric vehicles can be the same price as gasoline vehicles, and then the cost of energy can be equivalent or cheaper. So you can actually address this issue by really working and thinking, how do you create battery as a service? So to enable this to happen, we took 4 pieces. We looked smart batteries that were very long life at low cost, quick interchange stations where you could swap these batteries in less than a minute, and a plug-and-play solution where you can integrate with OEMs, all connected by a smart network that connects the customer, the batteries, the station via an app and the cloud, and integrates all this together. I have a short video that the team will just show you of how the solution right now works. Please, can you play the video? So as you can see, a customer just walks in, he takes out the battery from the station, and he puts his RFID chip, a card on that, puts in the battery, it sees how much energy it's consumed. It then gives you a new battery, which you take out. You then tells you how much energy you put. It automatically bills you, and you're on your way to move on. It's a single solution for 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, and any form factor. So over 23 million vehicles produced a year. You can use one for a 2-wheeler, 2 or 3 for different form factors as we look at this front. To enable this to happen, what we try to do is create an ecosystem on this area, right? The first is we got 10 OEMs to partner with us. We got customers on board like the Uber and Smarty. We signed up with Indian Oil Company to look at a large infrastructure where over 30,000 outlets are there. And we've also recently partnered with Bosch as a strategic investor who's actually invested in the company to look at it. And so we strongly believe on ecosystem to look at this whole thing. So how do I see the role of AI in all of this? I think there are 5 roles. One is on the product performance optimization. Electrics need a lot of optimization, and AI can play a great role. The second is usage optimization. The way vehicles are used, the stop and go driving, the usage conditions, you can get probably 15% improvement just by optimization on this area. The third is all future-ready technologies. We just talked about driverless cars. A large play of AI will come there. The fourth is on-demand and seamless mobility that we look at it on this area. And the fifth is integration of energy and mobility. We spoke about that earlier. Imagine integrating, you know when energy is produced, you know when mobility is being used, and you integrate these pieces as they come together. Within the company, we've been trying to look at different areas of using AI, from how do we look at key performance indicators on battery, swap time, energy consumption, to predictive areas to predict performance of failures, improve these areas, to prescriptive areas of creating automatic testing, self-repair of stations, and a host of diagnostics and safety areas as we look at it. So it really plays a large role, and as we collect more and more data, we see an even larger role of AI on this front. What does it mean for all of us? Well, I think that we all talk AI, and I think you need a very strong level of system engineering, because what you're trying to do is create a meaningful difference in this. So how we think about system engineering, how we think of software, how we think of electrical, mechanical, electronic systems coming together, and the influence of AI on the system. And so I think this knowledge, not just of AI, but of systems, is going to be very critical as we look at this front. And for companies, it's all about how we think of reducing time, collaboration, and creating modular solutions and new business models on this front. So what are some of the opportunities ahead? Well, the auto industry, is $350 billion by 2030. It's going to be about new products, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, all of this. 50% of bill of material is very different. So it's going to be all new, a new supply chain of over 75 million, $1 billion that can come in. It's going to be new mobility solutions, which would be around shared mobility, charging, software infrastructure, and energy will be the new area replacing by batteries, solar, and charging, which is a $200 billion opportunity, and newer technologies that would come in as a result of this area, right? From a large scale point of view, in addition to what I just spoke, we're talking about that we could use the entire energy and renewable. 60% of our total power will be renewable, and we could integrate it. We're talking about huge impact that if 30% EV penetration was there, you're close to over 800, almost 850 million tons of CO2 reduction. We're looking at new jobs, or probably 10 million jobs that could be created in terms of looking at upskilling and seeing how the entire new industry would take on this area here. And a real global impact. I think India has an opportunity in this area, like it's done in other markets, to lead the world in this area, which is a $1.3 trillion industry on this area. I'll just take another 30 seconds on this front. And I think one key important thing is going to be how the role of government in everything can be a force multiplier, right? And I think the criticality is how do we create technology agnostic policies that help everything move together. And the second thing I think is at a much larger level is there's a lot of areas on visioning, but these policies don't seem to roll down to the nitty gritty. So this is going to be a very important part if you want to look at it. And the third part is I think we have to really encourage R&D, both at technology and startups. And I think this would be another key area that the government play an important role. So I'll stop. Happy to answer.